How's it going, everybody? I'm here with Rivka Board. Obviously, I'm Andrew Fialkow, both of Jets X Factor. Um, just wanted to get on to a little pregame show with you guys, answer any questions. I'm obviously feeling the nerves right now. I don't know about you, Rivka, but it definitely feels like I'm about to go out there and play. I'm very nervous for the game, but just excited that we're finally here. It's been a long off season. Obviously, Rivka does a ton of great articles on our website. Um, I've been doing film reviews for free agents and whatnot for a long time, so it's good that we're finally here. But yeah, just gonna talk about the game a bit, get into some of your questions. Obviously, whatever you have in the chat that you want to pop up. So yeah, I think we just get it going from now. So yeah, I was just my first thoughts on the game. Obviously, hoping that we have a lot in play to get the ball out quickly. Just get Rodgers in a rhythm with all the guys. I think having expectations that the offense is going to look flawless tonight. I just don't anticipate that being the case. I think it's going to take time. I think Lazard's going to be primarily in on the three receiver sets. Hopefully, we get Mike Williams involved when it works. But like they've said a bunch, they're just going to kind of ease him into things. But Rivka, what are your thoughts on the game tonight, and what are you looking for the most?
So yeah, it's funny you mentioned the nerves because my husband was just asking me, "How are you? Are you excited?" I'm like, "No, I'm just nervous."
Yeah,
I feel like I'm more nervous than I was even last year heading into the game. It just feels like with everything with Rodgers and how long we've waited to see what's going to happen, and I feel like I have more expectations for this team than I did last year. And so it's just that it's so nerve wracking in that way. But as far as what you want to see from the game, it's like you have obviously you said get Rodgers in a rhythm, but even that makes me think of last year because that play was meant to be a quick slant.
right.
It was just a quick slant with a cut block. So it's like I hope Rodgers can just get it out quickly and not try to do too much in this game. I'm sure he's learned a lot from his injury, and he said, I wish I had thrown it away, but or I had thrown it to Garrett, but you just looking at it, it's like my chief goal in this game is keep everyone healthy and keep the game close.
Right.
I don't want to get blown out on Monday night. Obviously, you want to win, but I think more than anything else, you want to stay healthy and you want to make sure you show everyone that you belong here against a great team.
I agree. And while you were talking, I was just checking Twitter, and a huge bomb just came out. McCaffrey is not playing tonight.
Oh my gosh, I need to change my my fantasy team now.
I also have my fantasy team, but I mean, it said he was limited the whole week. He expressed confidence he was going to play. This is obviously massive,
Massive.
massive,
Wow. Wow, wow.
massive.
Totally changes the game.
Yeah, completely
I would
changes
go
the
as
game.
I would go so far as to say I think the Jets are the favorites without McCaffrey.
Right. Very curious, obviously, to see what the line movement is. But I mean, this changes so much because of how good he is out of the backfield as a runner, but also he poses a huge threat as a pass catcher. This is gonna allow, I think, Quincy and CJ to not be in as much conflict as they definitely would have been with all like the short motions, the cheat motions that they do to get McCaffrey one on one with linebackers. Obviously, now it's Jordan Mason, I think, who's going to be
Mhm.
the next man up. Um, but yeah, I mean, this is huge. This is he's as big of a focal point of their offense as if I guess I could compare it to if Brees was out for us. I think we're going to try and almost emulate what they would do with McCaffrey. We're going to try and do with Brees, but I mean, I can't help but say that I'm not extremely upset about this. Besides, obviously, for both of our fantasy teams, but this is massive for the Jets. And like you said, I'm extremely curious if anyone in the chat is looking to see if I'm sure the line just went off the board, but I'm super curious. I feel like the line is definitely going to move right now.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's almost hard to absorb this. I've been going back and forth in my mind for for a while now. Because when I heard the Jets were playing for the 49ers in week 1, I was upset about it. Because I'm like, could we just get, the Patriots at home, the Titans, something like that, a relatively easy game. And then it's like, come on, we're playing San Francisco, our hardest game of the year in week 1. And then you started seeing the holdouts, Trent Williams, Brandon Ayuk, and it's like, oh, maybe it's better off getting them in week 1 because those guys are holding out. Maybe they won't play. And then obviously they're back, but then there's the narrative of rust, and Ayuk obviously hasn't even practiced. And
Yeah,
so Shanahan had talked about how maybe they would have him on a pitch count. And now you look at this and just McCaffrey, and it's like, if there's any time you want to play the 49ers, it's when Christian McCaffrey isn't playing.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, this is kind of shocking. And you would assume that the entire week, Saleh and the defense were planning to play a fully healthy offense for the Niners. So I don't know if this changes game plan wise. They have about an hour and 20 minutes until kickoff, but I think this changes a lot. I don't know per se. Like, I don't think it's going to change the philosophy of the defense. They play a lot of quarters coverage, don't blitz a lot. But I mean, it just factually, McCaffrey is an extremely explosive runner, and Jordan Mason is a huge downgrade. So it almost puts more pressure on the Jets right now, I would say, to win the game tonight. But look, it's like if the Niners heard in their locker room, hey, like Brees is out tonight. Not that he was even on the injury report, but I think it should be like a big confidence thing. Rob D said in the chat, it's now down to 3.5. I thought it was already 3.5. But I
So it
see
depends which sports book. Some had 4.5, I think.
Yeah. Man, I just feel like this does put a little bit more pressure on them. But look, this was a winnable game with or without McCaffrey. How's it going, Stack? Winner with or without McCaffrey, this is a winnable game. Obviously, like, I feel like you probably feel the same. Like, running backs overall, I don't find to be that valuable, but a guy like McCaffrey is extremely valuable because of what he does besides just the aspect of running the football. He's a massive threat all over the field. I kind of think now that, like, I'd be licking my chops if I were the Jet defense coverage wise, because you could almost look. I don't know if they're gonna. I'm curious your opinion on this also. I wonder tonight if they're gonna do what they said kind of the offseason and travel Sauce to the strength of the formation, which would be with Brandon Ayuk, because I personally feel like it would be a waste to put Sauce on Debo when I think DJ Reed could easily hold his own in some of the man coverage situations. But curious your take on that.
So, it's kind of like what happened with that is Sauce kind of said he was going to travel. Jeff Ulbrich kind of pulled it back a bit. I suspect that whatever their game plan was, that obviously they're just going to continue with it. So if their game plan wasn't to travel Sauce, then they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
Honestly, I was most concerned about George Kittle all along. And so I would like to see, meaning especially with McCaffrey kind of keeping, that level of the coverage kind of, focused on him. I was very worried about Kittle. And
Right.
so if anything, I'd like to see more focus of the coverage on Kittle. I assume, look, I would be very happy to see Sauce travel with Ayuk, because Ayuk is a very good route runner.
Yeah.
And not that I think that DJ Reed is a bad player, but I just think DJ Reed sometimes against elite route runners tends to open his hips too early. And so, and we saw him get beat later in the year last year. I mean, Miami in particular, we saw Jalen Waddle beat him, but there were also a few others. I think the Texans beat him on a few teams beat him on deep balls. And so definitely would rather see Sauce on him, but I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're just going to stick with the game plan they have. But without McCaffrey in there, it kind of means just, again, more focus on Kittle. The linebackers are less concerned just about like getting flat-footed or things like that. And it kind of allows the Jets to play their game of sitting soft and not, and letting them rally to the underneath players.
Right.
One thing I do want to point out about Jordan Mason is he only has 83 career carries, but he's averaged 5.6 yards per attempt. So again, 83 carries is a very small sample size. And obviously he likely played at least some percentage of the time when the 49ers were up big. Things like that. And obviously he's not Christian McCaffrey. I'm not making that assertion at all. I'm just saying, it's fair to assume that the 49ers can still have a good running game without McCaffrey. They're not going to have the same explosiveness factor. They're not going to have the same, threat to score on every play. They're not going to have the same receiving threat, but it's definitely worth noting that it's not like, suddenly the 49ers run game is going to be terrible.
Correct. I agree. I feel like I've read a couple of your articles on Jet X Factor about the Jets being kind of susceptible to the run game, and that's kind of been a weakness of theirs. And we don't know what the D line is going to look like tonight. I mean, we're without Quinn Jefferson from last year, JFM from last year, obviously Huff from last year, who predominantly played on third downs and wasn't a huge run stopper, but no Reddick. It's going to be on, I think personally, the UDFAs who are going to get some burn, because You know how Saleh does his D-line rotations. Like everyone's going to get some playing time. But yeah, I still think I agree with you. Like we don't know obviously when the majority of those Jordan Mason rushes were coming. I feel like he does end up getting in when they are up 30, 40 nothing. So hard to evaluate, but again, if they're able to run block well, I don't think it's a massive downgrade in the run game as it is in the passing game. I was just reading a chat, everyone saying McCaffrey's out. Yeah, we hit that. And I was looking actually at the defensive coverage rates from last year for the Jets. This guy Football Insights on Twitter that posted a bunch, and I've talked to him before. The Jets play predominantly like cover 1, cover 4, cover 3. It looks like. I guess they don't really
Cover
do the
6, they
cover
do.
6 as
Yeah.
well. I feel like they don't do the combo coverages that well. Like PFF doesn't really like understand them that well, and so forth. So I guess cover 6 is just a form of 3 deep, you could say.
Mhm.
So I guess you could basically group that in. The Jets play a good amount of those coverages. Rarely see too high safeties. I think it's going to
Well,
be
4 is too high, but
4 is too high. You're right. Yes.
yeah.
So I guess half the time we're too high, but I do feel like last year there was a lot of times that we were keeping a safety in the box, which a lot of teams do. A lot of teams aren't playing much too high anymore because you're very susceptible to the run. Then I just don't know. I'm just very curious to see if the Jets now can keep the Niners in 3rd and longs. This could be a really big game for Will McDonald because I'm not too familiar. I didn't do like I feel like I definitely didn't do as much like research this week as you did probably on the offensive line for the Niners. But whoever's against Colton McKivitz, again, I'm not too familiar
He's
with
their
him.
right tackle, and he stinks. He's not an
Okay.
NFL level right tackle, not a starter
So if
level.
if,
Yeah.
if that's the case, Jermaine Johnson, Will McDonald, whoever it is, like Trent Williams, we know what he's about. We know what he's going to do. It's going to be tough to get a lot of pressures on him. But I look at the rest of the offensive line. Again, not very, very familiar. I feel like they've had Colton McKivitz for a while. At Jake Brendel, I'm looking at Aaron Banks, obviously Trent Williams. It's not a great offensive line. Obviously, you have Kittle and Juszczyk in the run game, which I think they're really good and they help the run game excel. But you get this team in some 3rd and long situations, and we still do like as much as everyone's saying our D line is depleted. We still have Jermaine, we still have Quinnen. We're probably gonna have Will in on most of the 3rd downs, and then who knows? It's Kinlaw's reunion game. Maybe he makes a couple of plays. I think it's an extremely beatable offensive line in the pass game, but what's your take on that?
So, first of all, I should just mention the inactives came out, and Leonard Taylor is inactive, which
Ooh,
is a bit of a surprise. They elevated Jalen Holmes from the practice squad, and when I saw that, I thought that Taylor might be inactive because Holmes is one of these inside-outside guys. They like him as like a big edge slash kind of guy, so they have him active. Eric Watts is inactive. Brandon McGregor is active. So that'll be interesting from that level of just how they kind of rotate their defensive line. It seems like Clemens is going to be the starter in base defense, and the Jets have an inexplicable fondness for Clemens,
yeah,
and so you just have to hope that he's not in there on that many passing downs because it's completely losing any advantage that they might have
yeah,
against a very poor right tackle, and so that would be very frustrating. Now, the problem with Jermaine Johnson is he's going to be locked up with Trent Williams most of the day, probably one-on-one. Anything that he does to win is gravy. You cannot expect him to ever win that matchup. I
right.
mean, because again, Jermaine is a good player. Trent Williams is the best left tackle in the game.
Agreed.
Um, and then you have Quinnen, who's probably going to be taken by the left guard and the center, presumably. The left guard is I think it's Aaron Banks, right? It's Banks is the left guard, and then Puny, the rookie, is the right guard.
Yes, that's exactly. And then Jake Brendel, who's been with them, it looks like for at least 4 years, he's the center. Um,
Yeah, but Brendel had a terrible year last year. Puny is supposed to be a good pass blocker, not such a good run blocker. But again, he's a rookie. I think this game will largely come down to is the one-on-ones on the right side of the 49ers offensive line, the left side of the Jets defensive line, because that's where the Jets are weaker, but that's where the 49ers are very weak. And so
right.
obviously, look, Quinnen can beat double teams. He gets double team more than anyone else in the NFL, and he's still an extremely productive player. But again, those players like Kinlaw, they really need a big game from him. They need him to hold up better in the run game than he did in San Francisco. They need him to they need him to be able to generate some sort of pass rush, especially if he has one-on-ones, win your one-on-ones. I'm disappointed to see Taylor inactive only because it would have been very nice to see him go up against a rookie. And, again, he looks like a very, very promising pass rusher, to put it mildly. I'm assuming also that part of the reason Taylor is inactive is because they're facing McCaffrey, because they were facing the 49ers. If so, that's kind of a shame, because I wonder if they might have changed their approach if they had known that McCaffrey's out. Like, meaning the Jalen Holmes move screams that they wanted run game support. Like,
Right.
Again, just having him out there. And so you just kind of wonder, would they have done things different? Maybe not. Look, they tend to, they deactivate their rookies sometimes, but I just wonder if that's the case.
Yeah, that's a good point. I wonder about that as well, because he did have such a good preseason and obviously made the team as UDFA, which was really cool. But again, I'm just looking at, I guess, the backup for, like, what I'm curious your thoughts on this. I just don't know what we're expecting to get from Solomon Thomas at this point. He's a lot older now. I feel like he's been pretty average to solid for us overall. I don't know how much juice he truly adds as a pass rusher. Again, it's hard on the snap count he's going to play, but like you said, look, Michael Clemens is going to be our starting defensive end tonight, which look, I think we have to get creative. It's like very imperative to get creative, move Jermaine around, move Quinnen around, try and get different looks for them. But I don't know what were your thoughts on Solomon Thomas from last year, and if any expectations for him this year?
So I'll tell you what it was about Solomon Thomas. He's not a good run defender. Actually, he's a very bad run defender. He's a
Okay.
very, very bad run defender. Again, he's 290 something pounds. I think he came into the league at 273 actually, but then he gained weight when they moved him to a full-time defensive tackle instead of a tweener. But again, he's listed at 294. So on double teams, forget about it. He gets pushed over, pushed around. As a pass rusher, he actually was pretty decent last year until they asked him to take on a full-time role. When he was playing as a backup, when he was their third or fourth defensive tackle, he actually, he played as an average player, which is great from a backup defensive tackle. Then when they asked him to take more snaps and he was playing, that's when his production went down, meaning his consistency as a pass rusher, because presumably he was playing more in runs, in more run situations. Maybe before that he had tilted more towards the pass. I don't remember that exactly, but right. I would have preferred, certainly, I wasn't thrilled with the Kinlaw signing. I would have preferred to get a defensive tackle who I trusted more. I would have been fine with Kinlaw as a third defensive tackle. I wasn't thrilled with him as a second. The same way I'm okay with Solomon Thomas as the fourth defensive tackle. I'm not thrilled with him as the third. Not that I like Lecky Fotu as the third either. I think I'd prefer Solomon Thomas over him. But it's really hard to know what you're going to get from Thomas, and that's why I think Kinlaw is going to get a lot of snaps. I really do, because I think they tried to bring him in to be a two-way player, to be a run and pass player, instead of Quinton Jefferson, who was really primarily a pass rusher, very bad in the run game. So we'll see how it holds up.
Yeah. And while you're saying that, I was just getting up to PFF stats, which I like PFF. Their stats could be iffy. I feel like I've tried to chart things that they've charted and not seen it the same, but this is just the overall from last year. I mean, we're missing 67 pressures from Bryce Huff, 50 from JFM, 29 from Quinn Jefferson, and then we beat it to a pulp here, but Michael Clemens was just not efficient as a pass rusher. I know you know that, and you've seen that, but I mean, his pressure rate was almost 3%, which looks like actually the worst on the team for guys that qualified. For example, Bryce Huff's was 12%, so it's like pressure per pass rush. So look, relying on him, I don't love. Even Solomon Thomas was at 5.4%. He had 17 pressures last year, but he actually had 6 sacks, it says. So I guess that's good production for a low pressure amount. But I think tonight it's not going to be. I feel like a lot of people have been saying how important it is for the Jets to show that they have a great O-line. D-line. So Hassan Reddick, for anything to do with Hassan Reddick, I disagree with that. I don't think this tonight should have anything to do with the Hassan Reddick situation. I think, like we said, besides the Trent Williams side, we should be winning our matchups, and I think it's important that we would be winning our matchups one-on-one. I don't see how they have any real advantage. And now more I think about it, I think this could be a big game for Jermaine Johnson. unless they put him on Trent Williams, then we're asking a lot for Will McDonald. But I feel like it's pretty easy to move people around. Look, like they're not moving Trent Williams around. We can get Jermaine Johnson on Colton McKivitz. I don't think unless you know analytically if he's like better rushing from one side or the other. I feel like that's a matchup that you would want to take advantage of.
Yeah. So what's interesting about the Jets in 2022, they very much kept their edge rushers on one side, meaning JFM played the left side of the defensive line,
Yeah.
right side of the offensive line. Carl Lawson only played on the right edge. Jermaine Johnson only played left edge. I'm trying to remember who else they had at the time. Huff basically played. He also played left edge. Like it was very regimented. Last year they switched it up a little bit more. So, but the thing is, I think Johnson. I think that the way they're listing it is that Johnson's going to be on the right side and then Clemens on the left. So that leaves Johnson isolated on Trent Williams. Now
Right.
he is also, I mean, of the two, I don't, whatever Clemens' reputation is, Johnson is a better run defender, and so it makes sense to put him on the side of Williams in that sense. It could be. I imagine they'll move him around in pass rush situations. Like I could see very much them lining him up in the A gap, kind of like they used to do last year, where you kind of
Yeah.
you take, especially it helps obviously his speed, but also it gives Quinnen one-on-ones
Yep.
because they have to account for it. So I imagine the Jets will be moving around Johnson on pass only downs. But I do think he will be locked up with Trent Williams more often than not on let's say first earlier downs or just on plays where the run game is possible. I mean, it's not ideal, but then again, Reddick played almost exclusively on the left side with Philadelphia.
Yeah.
I think 80 to 90% of his snaps were on the left side. So that was kind of what the Jets were planning to do coming to the season anyway, have Johnson on the right and Reddick on the left. So I imagine they'll stick with that. It's obviously not ideal, having your best pass rusher on the best left tackle in the game.
Yeah.
But in terms of creativity, maybe they will mix it up more on earlier downs too. Maybe they will change things up. Jalen Holmes, I could see him getting more snaps than we would expect in this game because, whether at edge or on the inside, because again, he's that tweener type. He's a big edge. And I think that they might, in that way, they might just prefer having him out there for the run defense, even with McCaffrey out. It'll be very interesting to see, certainly. But yeah, you definitely will see Johnson line up in the A or B gaps on third down.
Yeah, I think you made a good point about I was rewatching some of our film from last year, and they did move Jermaine Johnson around. Like putting him head up in the A gap is a good thing because of what you said. You create one-on-ones for Quinnen Williams. If Jet fans watching right now remember last year, I feel like so much of the time on third down, we would put three guys on one side. It would usually have been Huff by himself, and then sometimes CJ Mosley mugged up above the A gap. I would love to know the rate he blitzed because it felt like every single time he dropped back and
He dropped.
it was the robber or maybe he was playing man on the running back. But putting a guy there, you're just making the center have to identify him. Maybe he's the Mike. So they're just going to dictate their whatever way they put the protection. It helps. So I think we're going to see that a ton tonight. It also it remains to be seen, but these guys know each other very well. Obviously, Shanahan was solid with Shanahan's DC, and I feel like they were together for quite a long time. So you would hope that that Saleh has some idea. I know that Shanahan's system has evolved over the years, and it's continuing to evolve. But you would hope that he has a good idea for what's going to be coming their way. And I would be more upset, I think, and I'm again curious your take, if the defense was unprepared tonight, as if and rather the offense, because we still know the offense is a work in progress. We've basically retained at least our back. No, we didn't retain our back four because Jordan Whitehead. We retained our cornerbacks, one of our safeties, both our linebackers, a good amount of the defensive line. There's continuity there. Obviously, with the offense, there's not a lot of continuity. It's a new five starting for us on the offensive line. Obviously, Rodgers has a rapport with Lazard, but he's never played a game in real life with Garrett or Gibson. So my take, I hope that the defense looks a lot more prepared than the offense. And then, look, they just got to keep us in the game. I really am, as we're getting closer to game time, I feel more and more confident about us winning this game. And the McCaffrey news helped out a lot. But we haven't even spoken about the offense at all yet. But whatever your take is on that, curious to hear, obviously.
You mean in terms of the offense or just in terms of the defense being more prepared?
I think the defense being prepared.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was very worried about the defense in this matchup. I feel like the 49ers, yes, they do play a zone scheme, which should have been better for the Jets. It's the gap up the middle that I was more concerned about. But I would be
Right.
surprised if Shanahan doesn't do more of that. He's too good of a game planner to just like be like, nope, I'm going to stick with my zone scheme when this team is very susceptible to gap runs.
Yeah.
That being said, obviously without McCaffrey, things change a lot. And if the Jets defense cannot contain the 49ers offense sans McCaffrey, I think that will be a pretty bad thing. It doesn't certainly does not bode well for their chances throughout the season. Obviously, again, you can come out slow, but if you recall last year, obviously their offense. I mean, even before Rodgers went out, the offensive line was having issues, but the defense played very well in Week 1.
Yeah.
I mean, again, Josh Allen gave them at least 2 gifts. One of them was a real interception. The other 2 were him just throwing up into double coverage and saying whatever.
Yeah.
But still, overall, the defense came out, played well. They stopped Buffalo in overtime, right? They played well, and so you really want to see them again. San Francisco's a worse matchup for the Jets than Buffalo is because of the horizontal stretch. Like when you talk about Debo and you talked about McCaffrey and things like that, like just that speed and forcing the Jets to tackle. It's not something they do great, and so that was a concern. But again, without McCaffrey, they really should be able to step up and make life difficult for Brock Purdy and for the 49ers. And I mean, again, even just getting into those third and long situations, again, you don't have McCaffrey to get 5.4 yards per carry. And
Right.
so I would tend to agree that this defense really needs to show its chops in this game.
Yeah, and I've been someone that's studied a lot of Shanahan's offenses, and he relies on a lot of the middle of the field stuff. So tonight, watching out for the Ayuk, I always forget it's not even a basic, but whatever they call it, that's like the little in breakers that they run.
Mhm.
That they spam that a lot. Obviously, look out for a lot of the deep play action, but again, I'm not so worried about our corners getting beat again. Like hopefully, again, it's gonna be interesting to see Chuck Clark tonight. He hasn't played in like 2 years now, so that'll be intriguing. But like you said, McCaffrey changes a lot because of the horizontal aspect, and now I would assume to see at least 4 or 5 jet sweeps to Debo, pin and pulls to Debo, just toss cracks to Debo. Look, I mean, if I know how you'll feel about it. If I see Clemens getting like cracked down and like not knowing what's going on, I'll be the least bit surprised. But I could see them take. We're susceptible to we have 4 down guys. They love going upfield. Like we're susceptible to the trap runs, the crack block, the crack toss runs. So would I be shocked to see that? No. And I also think Debo could be in for 5 to 8 carries now. Just as a guy, I don't even know who their third string running back is. Might be a rookie.
It was Isaac Garendo, but I think he's hurt. So I'm not even sure who they have because Elijah Mitchell went on IR out for the season.
Right.
So again, I actually don't know even who their third string, well, now their second string. I don't know what their running back depth is like.
Yeah. So I don't know either, and I think it's just going to be important. I think we hold them to 17 or less points tonight. Start off hot. I think we'll be in a good spot, but we haven't spoken about the offense yet, so I feel like we could definitely get into that. Oh wait, here we
Let's
go.
just get to this question because it's
Yeah.
been sitting here for a while.
Sure.
Uh, Yeah, so it's sorry for being a Debbie Downer here after 51 years as a fan, but I remember our disastrous final seconds game 1 in San Francisco in 1998 and the game I went to at Candlestick in 2008 where the Jets simply didn't show up with the playoffs still in play. Every playoff run starts with a key injury in game 1. Who will it be? AVT, Tippmann, Hackett, and Soller directing our offense? Well, that's comforting. Lastly, there's the NFL.
Well, that's a loaded question. First off, I don't want to like I'm not doing the injury stuff. We've had such bad injury luck that we God's got to be on our side with that at this point. I can't do the injury stuff. Um, the Hackett and Salah directing our offense thing, I don't look so much into that. This has been the same system that Rodgers has been in for a very long time. I think Salah being involved like that. I feel like he's talking about the report that Salah was like a little bit more involved with the offense. I feel like that could only be a helpful thing. He's coaching a defense primarily, so he has good insights. You would hope. I don't know what the end of the question is. Was he like saying, "Are we gonna?"
Well, he kind of said something about I don't know. It just said, "Well, that's comforting," and then he said, "Lastly, there's the NFL," which I don't really know what you meant by that. But yeah, I mean, look, obviously there's a way to be, again, injuries. This Jets team certainly is susceptible to injuries when you combine, Rodgers, Mike Williams, Tyron Smith, AVT. Just you look at those four and their injury histories. There's definitely a chance that injuries could kill this team. But
Yep.
you can't go into the season looking at that. And honestly, I feel like if you can keep Rodgers upright, um, you still have a very good chance, even if those other guys miss time with injuries. And so, again, I can't sit here thinking about that. You just can't. You're gonna, if you're a fan, like you're like, okay, you're dumping the season before it even starts.
Right. So
Yeah.
yeah, I
So now,
agree.
yeah.
I agree, and I think we've also positioned ourselves better than last year. Obviously, if there, thanks, Todd. If there's like an injury, if there's an injury that goes down and it's not, God willing, knock on wood, season ending, we've positioned ourselves pretty well at premium positions. Obviously, we have Tyrod as our backup quarterback. Look, Olu is a good swing tackle, maybe swing tackle. I mean, they tried him at right tackle in the preseason. That's as good as you're going to get. You drafted him with a premium pick, so he's not seeing time. Everyone was upset about that. He's going to be playing this year, so I think we're set up well. I like Jamie and Sherwood. If I know everyone thinks we have poor linebacker depth, it's hard to have depth everywhere. If a team like the Browns, or I guess the Browns not a good example, but any good team that like their top corner went down, it would be bad for them. Like it's just hard to have insane depth everywhere, or they would be on a different team.
Imagine if Chris Jones went down for the Chiefs. I mean, he's their whole defense.
Exactly. So, like talking about injuries and stuff, I just feel like the Jets are at a good place. Obviously, there's some guys you just can't afford to lose, so you hope that doesn't happen. But depth wise, I think this is as good of a team that Joe Douglas could have put together going into the season. I can't really think of like a different move besides maybe adding receiver. I was kind of hoping.
Receiver was the one thing I was going to say. Yeah.
Yeah, I was hoping that like look if we need receiver reps tonight, it seems like Corley, he's not ready and they don't seem very comfortable with him yet. So I don't think he's gonna see a ton of burn tonight. But yeah, if there's one position that we don't have great depth at, I feel like it would be receiver.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I kind of like, I didn't love the Corley pick, mainly because I would have preferred a receiver who maybe could see the field a little more, even if they weren't polished. I know it was a long-term move and not just a short-term move, but I
Yeah.
don't know. I felt like in this year, making a short-term move in the third round of the draft at receiver would have made more sense.
Yeah, I agree. I see one question. What do you think the first play of offense will be? I honestly I was at 3 of the training camp practices this year, so I feel like I don't know if they were doing. I think in the joint practice they were trying not to show their hand. Um, I'm between like just a bit. I don't know how much gap scheme we're gonna run tonight. I'm very intrigued to see that. I think I'm in between. You know what? I think Rodgers is gonna be in shotgun, so I feel like they're gonna do that little like toss out to Brees and maybe pull 2 guys, either like a pin and pull or like a counter type play. Um, or you're gonna just see a quick play action glance route to Garrett, which if we get Fred Warner to come up, then we should rip that ball. But those are like the 2 thoughts I have, unless they want to go bomb first play of the game. I just don't know if we're gonna throw a deep ball to Garrett. Like, I don't know. I'm praying, by the way, for Garrett to be used like his skill set is supposed to be used this year, because looking back at last year, we asked him to do about everything. He had on PFF the most contested catch opportunities out of any receiver in the NFL, and whether it was inaccuracy, Garrett is not the biggest receiver to go up and make a great play, but he does do it time to time. I'm really hopeful that we just used him in his skill set that he's supposed to be used in, which is why we brought in a guy like Mike Williams. But if you have any insight on what you think the first play call of the game would be, I wonder.
I mean, I assumed it would be a handoff to Brees like last year. I mean, I can't say what type of play. I don't remember what the play was last year. I assume it was a zone. It was like an inside zone.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. So I assume that they'll probably hand it off. I mean, you could also see kind of like what we saw from in the preseason last year from Rodgers, which is he sees a certain look, he he calls it, he sees, if he says off coverage on Garrett, he'll just throw a quick little smoke screen, even if it was a run play call. And so you could see something like that. It'll be interesting to see how the defense, I mean, I think he'll really respond to the defense. That's really what Rodgers is like. He
Yep.
basically takes what the defense gives him. So chances are, whatever call that they have, if Rodgers sees a look and doesn't like it, he'll change it. I mean, look, if he sees Garrett one-on-one on the outside, with press coverage, he's probably throwing he's throwing it up to him, some sort of thing like that. So
Mhm.
it really depends on what defense San Francisco comes out in. But if you had to ask, if I had to bet, I would guess on some sort of run up the middle.
Yeah. I mean, Hackett doesn't give me I know everyone's gonna say, I know Hackett's going to play. He doesn't give me the vibes of like, oh, I want to go be aggressive and like take a shot. I would personally, and like screw it. Like if the look's there, it's not there. If not, just dump it down. I'm also extremely curious to see, are we comfortable with the O line up front? Like, are we gonna keep 6 guys to block, or are we gonna keep 7 on some plays? Obviously, that'll come with like play action plays where you can max protect. Are we gonna be in 12 personnel a lot? I feel like in that game against the Giants, the play you're talking about, we were actually in 13 personnel, where he threw the smoke screen to Garrett. But I'm extremely curious to see about the tight end usage. Anthony Firkser, he's active tonight, correct?
They elevate him, yeah.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you can't really go into a game with 2 tight ends on the active roster
I mean, they
because
had Brendan Bates, but Bates is inactive, so I guess
right.
they use Firkser. Um, yeah, I mean, we'll see. It'll be interesting to see. I do think they play a decent amount of 12 personnel relative to other teams in the league. They didn't as much last year, but that's probably because they were down so much. So you got
Yeah,
to play 11 personnel when you're getting killed.
right.
I would actually be more surprised to see them come out in 11 than 12 or even 13.
Yeah, so would I. I think I could definitely see like a little. It's funny enough. I felt like I saw so many condensed formations in the training camp, and I feel like we did not see that a lot last year. I don't know, like if there's. I always look for these stats, and like if you don't have like Sport Info Solutions or one of the other ones, it's hard to find. But I saw a lot of condensed formations, which would say like if you're running the ball, you need your receivers to be good blockers. So hoping Lazard is going to come out and be a good blocker. I feel like you could, again, correct me if I'm wrong. I felt like in Green Bay he was a little bit better, but last year it seemed like he was just checked out fully. But I did watch. Connor Hughes was talking before the game. He said, I mean, tonight he had like a little pregame video. He said quietly the Jets staff were very happy with the camp Lazard had. I, from what I saw, thought he had a decent camp. I don't think it's funny to say now because we like signed him to a contract and obviously people had high expectations. He has a very niche role. It's not like we're asking for him to do a ton of things. Maybe on a slant over the middle off play action, like if you can go get some yards after the catch, that's great. Besides that, you can tell me if I'm wrong again. He's a slot fade guy. We're gonna throw you the ball up. Hopefully, maybe it's their nickel on him, who he should have a huge size advantage against. And Rodgers is going to place it in your back shoulder. If you can make the play, great. I feel like that's why fans were so out on Lazard. But until Mike Williams is fully back, he's going to have this niche role that he should be able, you would hope, to fill and succeed in.
I mean, I think the whole idea. Look, I did an article before the Jets signed Lazard actually like right at the beginning of the offseason in 2023, talking about whether the Jets should replace Corey Davis, and I was comparing him to a few different free agent receivers, and I looked at Lazard and I said I don't think he's any better than Corey Davis,
Hmm.
but once they got Lazard, people had, because of his contract, had more expectations for him than they did of Corey Davis. I said, if anything, he's like a slightly worse version of Corey Davis in some ways. Like his hands are worse. He's
Right.
not as good of a blocker. He wasn't a bad blocker in Green Bay, but he's not as good of a blocker as Davis. He's slow. Obviously, he's because he's taller. He's just more, lumbering. He's not as quick, and
Right.
so I didn't have the kind of expectations for Lazard that other people did. I was fine with him as a number 3 receiver. I was not so fine with him as a number 2. And
Right.
so my hope for him this year as Lazard as Williams gets healthy is if you can get him back to that number 3 receiver look, if you get him back also technically the 4th or 5th target in the offense, right? Because you have obviously Garrett's going to be number 1. Then you have some combination of Williams, Conklin, and Brees Hall, 2,
Yeah.
3, and 4. It really depends on how Williams looks because he was a pretty heavy volume number 2 before he got hurt. So conceivably, if he's doing his usual things, he could be a target hog number 2. You take Garrett a bunch of the number 1, you give Williams the number 2, and then you kind of sprinkle them in the rest. But even if, let's say, Williams is taking some, you get Conklin involved, you get Brees involved. Again, Lazard could be the number 5 weapon in the offense, and I think he can do a very good job in that role with Rodgers, because he did. In Green Bay, he did his best work. He was his most efficient when he was like the 4th target. You had obviously a Devontae Adams. They had many seasons where they had Marcus Valdes-Scantling was taking the same or more reps than him, and then they had a tight end, or the running backs combined were taking more, and so he was not targeted as much. He got more like 60 targets a year, and when he did that, he performed well. He could catch a deep shot. He caught, one season he caught a bunch of touchdowns. And again, because he still can box out in the end zone and things like that. And so, my hope is that they don't have to ask Lazard to be a number 2 like they did last year without the other weapons. Again, if Williams can stay healthy, you can see a rejuvenate. Again, it doesn't mean Lazard's going to be great and he's always going to drop balls. That's just a part of his game. He doesn't have good catch technique. But again, if you can see him, again, make those plays on slant, as you said, he was better with Yak than you would think he would be, at least on those slants.
I felt that way too. Like, surprisingly, would make a guy or 2 miss. Like, he's not a burner in any sense, but could make a couple guys miss at least.
Yeah, and so again, you get him into that role of what he was good at, and you can get again. He's never going to live. I don't think he's ever going to live up to that contract. I don't think he will, and I think he's done with the Jets after this year. Unless if Rodgers stays and he's willing to take some sort of pay cut, maybe. Like, again, if you get him for $6-7 million, maybe he's more worthwhile than at an $11 million per year. But I still think you can salvage him. He doesn't have to become a fan favorite, but you can salvage something from him, kind of like what you're saying.
Right. Totally agree. I think we'll be on here for about 10 more minutes if anyone has any questions in the chat.
So let's get to some of the chats, because there's some earlier ones. So what do you think of this? So do you think those extra reps Salah work with the ones will help?
Wait, am I frozen?
Now you unfroze.
Okay. Do you think extra? Okay, sorry. Do you think extra reps worked with the ones? I think especially on offense, it will help. That's what I was thinking, because they need those reps. Those are invaluable. I think that Rodgers talking about how it was so important in camp that they had one of the hardest camps that they've had in a while, just reps wise and putting in that work. I think that was extremely important, and I'm kind of surprised that Salah did that. I feel like he's generally on the conservative side of just everything.
Can you guys hear me?
Hey, Connor.
Yeah,
what's going on, man?
I let Connor in. Hi, Connor.
Rivka, Andrew, how you doing?
Good. How about you?
I'm doing well. I saw the link. I had to pop in. I appreciate you guys bringing me on.
Yeah. Okay. So we're just talking about, we're trying to answer some of the questions in the chat. Mm-hmm. So Andrew was in the middle of responding whether the extra reps will help, from preseason will help, from training camp. And he said, the commenter says on the defense, Andrew was in the middle of saying he thinks it'll help the offense more.
It's going to be interesting with CMC out. I'm going to go to the 49ers first in terms of, I'm just talking about the 49ers first. CMC out. Isaac Garando, I think is how you say his last name. He talks about the Jets going after him. A lot of people liked him. It's going to be interesting, though, in terms of training camp reps. I'm not too sure on that one.
So, Andrew, you were in the middle of saying, what do you think?
Yeah. It was more important for the offense. I feel like we spoke about it earlier. The defense has already. They have a lot.
Okay. Yeah. You're starting to break up a bit.
Yeah. All right. It looks like we got you now.
Yeah. This is okay. Like I was saying, I think the defense has a lot of continuity. We were talking about this earlier, but the offense obviously just needs every rep possible. So I was happy that Salah did it for sure.
Mm-hmm. Now we have a comment here. So nervous I could vomit. Yeah. I think a lot of Jet fans can share that. So now we have to go to RELAX. So I'm trying, bro. Yeah, I know. I've been kind of distracting myself, being like, okay, it's not here yet. It's not here yet. It's not here yet. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy to think we're like 8 months now without a Jets regular season game, and it's so crazy to think that kickoff's in around 45 minutes now. It's crazy.
I really tried
Let's
doing
see
this
if we
show,
have
but
other questions.
I was like, what am I gonna do during this like 2 hour stretch? I just didn't want to like sit. First off, I'm so done hearing stuff about the Jets. I feel like we all feel that way. Like we've been covering them this whole offseason, and I'm like,
Yes.
I can't take any more opinions. I just want the team to get on the field, and we could just see what happens from there. So I'm like not trying to watch ESPN countdown, and hopefully they all predict the Niners will win. I could care less about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sick and tired. I never used to watch all these things. During the off season, I started watching them more just to find some content to write about. And it just makes your blood boil. It's like, okay, forget it. I don't want to hear about the Jets anywhere. I'm staying in my little echo chamber of Jets fans and Jets, and people who cover the Jets.
Absolutely. I mean, the national attention obviously got crazy. Obviously, I mean, when you bring someone like Aaron Rodgers to a market like New York, everyone is going to go crazy with all the opinions because Rodgers is just such a polarizing figure. So that balanced with the Jets, one of the worst, franchises as of late. And national media has always hated the Jets. It's just going to blow up.
Rivka, I was actually going to ask you about this comment because I didn't get to see a ton of the game yesterday, but I was hearing on Twitter today, like, and Connor, you as well. Kirk Cousins with the Achilles, they didn't run one play under center, so they were saying he was very immobile and everything. From what I saw from training camp with Rodgers, he looked very good. He looked like he can move like basically as normal. Kirk apparently yesterday was as immobile as it gets. So curious what you guys think about that because obviously coming off the same exact injury that Rodgers is coming off.
So let me just say something. Cousins, what week did he hurt his Achilles?
It was at least halfway through the season, I want to say.
I'm gonna check that up now. See the last time
Let's
he
see.
played. It was week 8. Okay, so that's probably what, November, something like October, late October,
Yeah.
something like that. Rodgers hurt himself 4 plays into the season, and so Rodgers has had 8 more weeks to recover than Kirk Cousins has, and
Right.
so that is definitely, I think, definitely makes a difference. 2-month differential. In terms of, I did not watch any of the Falcons game. I know Cousins didn't play well, and I was talking about what that would mean for Rodgers potentially. I don't know about the shotgun thing. As far as I saw in training camp, Rodgers was making his normal plays from every conceivable platform, under center, shotgun. He was running out of the pocket. Didn't seem like an issue. I think the bigger issue for the Jets is more just protecting Rodgers. I wrote an article like a couple of hours ago. I think the reason Cousins struggled more than anything else, again, not having watched a game, is just that he was under pressure a lot. I mean, TJ Watt was after him all the time. And so I think that if the Jets protect Rodgers, he will have, I don't say he's going to have like an elite night and he's going to throw for 300 yards and whatever. I don't think the Jets game script, I think they're trying to avoid that. But I think he will play his usual efficient self. You'll see him average, again, quick, get the ball quickly. You'll see him average at least 7.5, close to 7.5 yards per attempt. And I think they protect him. I think they'll have a good game. I think that's the biggest thing. I'm not even as concerned. Yes, I concerned about Rodgers getting hit and things like that. When the first time he takes a shot, I think every Jets fan all over the place is going to be holding their breaths like you can't imagine. But again, ultimately, I think it comes down to the consistent pass protection, and I think they have a good shot. I really do. I think I have confidence. I know it's the first time, but I have a confidence in a lot of their guys one-on-one. I think they'll give help on Bosa. Michael had written an article about how the Ravens contain Bosa basically by constantly chipping him and just and making it impossible. He never got a one-on-one with Morgan Moses, and so. And then Javon Hargrave, obviously a very good pass rusher up the middle. But, again, between Tippmann and AVT, I think you can get, and John Simpson, actually, I think he might play the same as Quinnen does. So Simpson had a very good game against him last year. Their other defensive tackles, Malik Collins, good pass rusher, not great. Leonard Floyd obviously has a bunch of sacks, but isn't necessarily, again, it's also Tyron Smith on him. So I'm really not worried about that. But I think it will come down to that to a large extent to see how Rodgers performs.
Yeah, I think pass protection, protecting him is, a huge thing. I'll pull up a comment from Brandon here. It says Rodgers in an interview confirms he has never gotten hit since that is going to be the hurdle. Yeah, I saw that was his interview with Alex Smith. I thought that was, hands down a great interview. And he said something along the lines of, "I was just hoping someone hit me during training camp to get the jitters out of the way." Were you guys at the time fans of wanting to see Rodgers in the preseason for a drive or two?
I wasn't. I think the preseason's an absolute joke, and there's nothing good that comes of it besides seeing how the guys are going to play and with pads on. I think coaches time and time again have said they don't use anything that they're going to use. Basically, they use like as basic of their playbook defensively or offensively as possible. So putting Rodgers out there to get a couple reps, if he's not going to get hit, like if that's really his last hurdle, he's not going to get hit anyway. I didn't see a real reason to put him out there.
Yeah.
So my I mean, I'm always look, when I heard he was playing last year in the preseason, I was holding my breath. I was terrified. And so in that sense, I'm always, concerned. And then as Andrew said, he's not going to get hit in the preseason. They would make sure he doesn't get hit. They're not going to run a step drop and have him sit in the pocket for over 4 seconds and all things like that. He would be getting out quick passes, run the ball, things like that. And so in that sense, if he wasn't going to get hit, what's the point?
Yeah, it's just I personally wanted to see him for a series or two just to get that, that hit out of the way. They say in the joint practice that, they're wearing pads. I was at the Jets Giants joint practice. Andrew, I saw you there as well.
Yeah.
It's they're wearing pads, but it's still two-hand touch football. So I just wanted to see Rodgers in that, somewhat of an in-game environment to, get that first hit out of the way.
Yeah, that's fair. That's definitely fair. Connor, I don't know how long you were going to stay on. If anyone had any more questions, I feel like it's getting close to game time, but I would stay for 5 more minutes.
Yeah, I just wrapped up my pregame show with Matt O'Leary. That's what I wrapped up. So that's why I thought I'd pop on over here.
Nice. How do things
with CMC?
Yeah, we talked. Me and Rivka talked about that for maybe the first 30 minutes of the show. Basically, it's not like another a regular running back being out. Obviously, it just changes the game a lot in the passing game. He's going to put it's going to be a lot easier, I think, coverage-wise to dictate it towards guys like Ayuk and Kittle now. You don't really have to worry a ton about the receiving threat out of the backfield. So it changes a lot. By the way, we just need to reference this because this random account, I go on Jake Asman's show. I know, Rivka, you were on it. This random account keeps I don't know if it's a male or female. I can't confirm or deny, but I'm just gonna what actually we don't need to pull that one up. Let's just move on.
Yeah. Okay, so there's a lot of there's a lot of comments here. I just wanted to comment on this one. If you think Tyron is letting Rodgers get touched tonight, you're dead wrong. You should just note, someone said over here that Tyron is going to shut down Bosa. Bosa lines up opposite the right tackle 80% of the time. And so he's not going to get, and I if I had to guess, I'm going to guess it's going to be close to 100% of the time in this game, because they're not. Why should they put Bosa on an All Pro when they can put him against, again, Morgan Moses is a good player, but he's not Tyron Smith.
Right. I think you see a lot of chips over there. I think last year, and when I hated how much the Jets would do the double chip and release, it really pissed me off. But I think you can get a chip from Conklin. Braylon Allen, we'll see how he plays if he gets in on some third down situations, but we got to do some boots, rollouts, chips, double teams. With those type of guys, you need to give them different looks. Like I know you say you give a QB that's really good different looks. You give a pass rusher like that different looks. He needs to not know which way the line's sliding, if he's going to get chipped, if we're running a rollout to the other side. I think that's a really good way to keep a guy like him at bay.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And, this offensive line, I've said it, Jet fans won't admit, but they were concerned last year going into last year's season with the offensive line. Now it's kind of tough to say that. They added 3 new starters, John Simpson, Morgan Moses, obviously 8-time All-Pro Tyron Smith. I feel comfortable with this offensive line, and I think that's why Jet fans should feel so confident with this supporting cast. And, hopefully Tyron Smith is not getting touched. Tyron Smith, is not letting Rodgers get touched tonight. That's the hope. I mean, the Jets haven't seen that in a long time. Last season, the tackles in week 1 were Mekhi Becton and Dwayne Brown.
Brown.
Dwayne Brown, who, gotta let the pressure get Leonard Floyd get past him to tear Rodgers' Achilles. So, if you compare Morgan Moses and Tyron Smith to Dwayne Brown and Mekhi Becton, that's a massive upgrade. Mekhi Becton is now the starting right guard for the Eagles.
Apparently had a pretty good game there.
I was just gonna say
He did, yes.
apparently looks pretty good. I feel like it's too close to game time. We should get some last second predictions. Chad could also predict, but you guys go first. Thoughts?
So someone put 31-13 Jets. Someone else put 19-17 49ers. I did not make my prediction in my season preview article. I predicted a loss, but that was without McCaffrey. That was with McCaffrey in there. I still feel, maybe I'm a little superstitious. I'm scared to predict the Jets a win, but I'll go 23-20 Jets.
Rivka, I had the same exact prediction this whole week. 23-20 New York Jets is my final score prediction. The Jets defense holds the 49ers offense to just 20 points. Aaron Rodgers is 81-10 in his career when that happens. Give me the New York Jets 23-20.
I just feel like this game's going to come down to a field goal. I don't know why I've had that feeling for a while. So 23-20 sounds great. I'm going to go 30-27. I guess
Wow.
Be a little high scoring.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see that. The one thing I'll point out is if it comes down to a field goal, the Jets do have an advantage because Jake Moody missed several. He missed a game winner last year. 49ers lost to the Browns. He missed it. I don't even think it was such a long field goal. He missed a couple of other field goals that he should have made. And so, I mean, again, we saw Zuerlein obviously miss 2 in the preseason, but I give me Zuerlein over Jake Moody if it comes down to a field goal to win the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Hopefully we do this another time. This was fun.
Yes.
Obviously, follow Rivka, follow Connor, follow me.
Appreciate it.
All doing good things for the website right now. But yeah, let's go Jets. Are you gonna run? You could run the post game thing, Rivka.
Yeah.
All right.